Good afternoon, and welcome to our presentation on Google Groups. This afternoon, we're going to talk about Google Groups, and we're going to consider Google Groups from two key perspectives. So there are really two types of Google Groups. There's Google Groups that is free, and that is the for consumer version, and there's Google Group for business. So if you have the Gmail account, you have access to general Google Groups, and that is free, and it has very limited set of features. The Google Group for Business has an expanded set of features, or enhanced, we refer to it here as the enhanced version. Google Group for Business comes with Google Apps for Education, as well as Google Apps for Works. The education version is, of course, free to some extent, and the Apps for Works costs you a couple of bucks a month per person, and the organizational packages. So we're talking about this in the context of IEEE. So the version that is available to the IEEE Google apps is a combination of both the Google App for Business and the Google Apps for Education. So Google App for Works and Google App for Education. So the version of interest is Google Group for Business. And this is also used in the IEEE Google for OU, which is primarily why we're setting up this presentation. So under IEEE, there are two key OU types. MGA. So within MGA, there are so many subsection sub-OUs. Sections are the most prominent. Regions are another type of OUs. Chapters, affinity groups are all different types of OUs within MGA. MGA, of course, for those who don't know, is the Member and Geographic Activity. And TAB, which is the Technical Activity Board, usually have societies. These are organizing groups, and they are organized based on the MGA groups are based on geography, which is within towns, cities, and communities, countries, and regions. And tabs are usually around technical activities, computer society, power engineering society, and stuff like that. So let's take a quick look at some of the key features of Google Group for Business. Google Group for Business, the best way to take a look at this is to actually see an example of what the interface looks like, and then we can use that to run through this. So this is Google Group for Business. I'm using this from a domain that is not IEEE, but this is part of Google for Works. And so when you look at this, you see a quick overview of groups. So when you go into Google for Business as a domain administrator, you can create different types of groups, or in this case, so let's take a look here. So when you come in here, you see you can browse your groups. You can take a list of all the groups that are available to you. And let's take a look at some of the key information here. It allows you to have conversations in a consistent place and give people power to have discussions. It is completely mobile friendly. So here we'll see a bunch of groups under this environment. So these are groups that belong to the user that is logged in. Let's pick one of the groups. For example, so this is one group, right? And under this group, we have topics. So we can manage the group, and then we'll see some of the capabilities of the group. One of the capabilities we're interested in are emails in general. So back to emails. So group has email addresses using email aliases. Group has roles. So the roles could be owners, managers, members. And group have permission posting. Group has permission, which is basic. So let's take a look at some of this. Let's look at some of the capabilities of groups. So we have group has email addresses. The best way to start is to consider this. Let's create a new group. Go back here and so let's start from here and try to create a new group. Create group. Click on this. Let's go through the process of creating a group. Let's call the group name this group. Have space in between the group name, but we notice that an email address is being created for the group here. Now, when we think about this, we can always make this email address anything we want. As long as it doesn't clash within the domain, it will be accepted. So the domain is here. For IEEE, this would just be IEEE.com. I mean .org. And then so we can have Baltimore section. And so the email address for the group will become Baltimore section at, if this was IEEE.org, then that would be IEEE.org. In this case, it will be at sigma.com. It's consistent with the domain name under here. Now, we can add any description for the group here. And so we can go ahead and add whatever description we want. And all of these will most likely be done by IEEE IT ahead of time. This is part of the Google for OU. We could choose the language based on the region. Of course, in the US, we'll stick with English, but we could easily change the language based on the region. Group type. This is perhaps the most important thing. This could be an email list. It could be a web forum. It could be a Q&A forum, or it could be a collaborative inbox. Each one of these 4 options gives groups a different identity. Again, let me say it again. This could be an email list. It could be a web forum. It could be a Q&A forum. It could be a collaborative inbox. And each one of these gives group its identity. We'll see what that means as we progress. We'll stick with the email list for now. That's the simplest. An email list conjure up the image of a listserv. Many of you are familiar with listserv and used this for many, many years. IEEE listserv has been around forever. And so we could use it as an email list. For now, then we'll come back and create groups for each one of the other 3 options, as a web forum, as a Q&A forum, as a collaborative inbox, and we'll see how each one of those unique group type creates the kind of feature sets that we might find useful in our community. Basic permission. Who has permission to do what? Who can view topics? And this could be the managers of the group, all members of the group, all organizational member, or just owners of the group. Who can post? That's key. That could be owners, and we see there's a last one here, which is the public. Each one of these determines a type of use case for the group. And who can join the group, of course, that also gives us a bunch of options. And these options are based on the use cases for the group. What exactly are we trying to do with the group? And in IEEE, when we've looked at different OUs, we have to consider the types of groups we're creating when thinking of the kind of permissions we're providing. So now that a group is created, we can invite people to join the group. We can add additional customization to the group, and we can start a topic. Of course, the whole idea is for communication. So this group, that's the group we created. This is the group. We can manage it. And when we click on manage, of course, this is probably not going to be available to IEEE members, but it's available to IEEE IT. So when they're setting this up, they use all this, whatever considerations we have. I created a group, so I'm the owner of the group. I can choose to invite members to the group by just typing their email address. So if this was IEEE, I just type the email address of IEEE members, or I could copy whatever that email meant for a section and just dump all of them here, and suddenly all members of the sections become member of the group. Or I could dump this for just a subset, so like the officers of the section, and those officers become members. And I could type an invitation email, and those people will get an invitation to join the group. That's one way to do it. There's another way to do it. That is just to add them directly. So they won't get an email that they're members of the group, but they are automatically members of the group. So that's a direct add. The invite members would send them an invitation, and each person would have to click on the response to become a member. The direct add would just make them a member, and they'll be members regardless. And here we can decide the kind of messages group members. This is important, particularly for IEEE members. For the generic members of the society, you don't want to be inundating them with messages every minute. So just sending all emails to them is bad, but not sending any email to the group is probably bad too, because then you're not achieving your goal. So perhaps we want to consider that for members in general, we want to send either an abridged email if we're trying to send them a message per day if there's a message to be sent, or a digest, which means only when there are 25 messages or more do they get a message. So we have to decide a policy based on our environment, our OU type. Typically, you probably just want to send an abridged message. And so only when there's a message for the day will a message be sent, and all of the messages for the day will be sent in one package. That way you reduce the sense that members are getting spammed. For officers, like owners, you could always go back and set them out and then set this subscription option specifically for them. Of course, every member can come back into the mail system, into their mail system, and check up their group membership and update this for themselves. However, this should be the default. For officers, you would prefer that they receive at least all the messages when they arrive, perhaps because you want them to be able to respond quickly to those messages. So this just tells you who's been invited and has not joined. We haven't invited anybody, so we don't have anyone here. This also shows you those who have requested to be members of the group. Okay, now that we've seen the basic settings of group and how to bring members into the group, this is probably not open to IEEE members, but it's all volunteers at that, but it's open to IEEE IT. So we understand what IEEE IT can do behind the scene to configure groups for us. Now, let's take a look at some other interesting parts of group. So we're going to talk about group roles. So there are 3 key roles. So let's look at the roles. There are owners, managers, and members. The owner is whoever created the group. Even though it says this role cannot be deleted, you can always change someone from the owner and make someone else the owner of a group. The owner can assign managers, and the owners can assign members. Managers can be updated with permission to allow them to add members or not. And so this is all very flexible. So create a role, we type the name of the role. Let's say officers. Describe the name of the role, whatever description you have. So you can only say, you can add a bunch of emails here and say only those who have email in that domain are allowed to be owners. So like i.ieee.org. Of course, group is open to a very broad range. And perhaps you would have noticed at the beginning that we can actually have multiple domains in an account. So you can use this to determine who actually have access to this specific role. Badge is just a display. And here you can decide who should be members of the group. I may have missed something. This is creating a new type of group, and then you would give the group whatever rights you want. So when we go back to members, let's go back to members. Here are the list of members. I'm the only member right now, but let's look at this. This is how you change who can be the owner. So if there are other members of the group, then I can do transfer of ownership, but there are no other members of the group, so I cannot do transfer of ownership. Email delivery, this is where this person changes. I could do it directly, or I could do it logged in as a user who is not there. So let's add another member to this group. Direct add. I'm going to add Christine. Christine. Let me add someone from another domain. This is my IEEE account, so I'm going to add this person to the group. And the person can receive all emails. Oh, sorry. This organization does not permit external members to be added. So let's do this again and add members. Yeah, I would have wished that I have access to the IEEE domain so that I could do this all in IEEE space, and that would make things a little easier for me to do this demo without exposing too much privacy from someone else, but I'm going to try. At sigma.com. Okay, that was an invite. So we could have done this as an invite, or we could do a direct add. Direct add is easier, so we don't need permission. We just go ahead and add Christine and add Christine. And now we have another user in the group. So that's great, because when you have more users in the group, you can actually show a few more interesting things. Let me show you a few things that I would like to do. Let's go to roles. Let's go back here and click on members and click on who is a member of the group. Okay, so let's manage this, and let's click on the other member of the group. I see the group member, this new member that was added had a default role of member. I can change this role to manager, and that gives the member certain permissions. I can change this role to owner. Now you see we can have multiple owners in the group. And let's go back here. Let's do this. So now that didn't hold. So let's go back, change this again to owner, save it. And now this, we have multiple owners in the group. Let's go and change. So remove from owner. And this person just becomes a member. And I can add role to them, make manager. This person just becomes a manager. And then we can determine the permission that each one of those roles have. We can also add different roles and give them specific permissions. That's what this is about. So now let's go to permissions. What kind of permissions exist for the group? So group members have permissions. They could post, they could moderate, they could manage access, or it just could be basic. So let's look at this. So under permissions, we have basic permission, and the basic permission basically says view topics, posts, join groups, allow members external to this organization. Which means in the case of IEEE, that means allow people who are coming from non-IEEE.org domain. So you decide who can view topics. The managers, all members, owners, or all organization members. So there's a difference between all members, managers of the group, all members of the group, and of course, all members of the domain, which means you're opening the group up to all of IEEE. Who can post? Same goes. Interestingly, you may also allow the public to post. And who can choose to join? You can either open it up within the organization alone, only those that are invited, or anyone in the organization may ask to join the group. In the posting, we see that people who are not members of the group can still post. However, only members of the organization can be members of the group. So that's under the basic permission. Now, the posting permission, so who can post? Who can add messages to the group? And what do the posts look like? This is how we manage that. You can add references. So those who are allowed to add references to posts. Those who are allowed to assign topics. So you can decide who gets a topic or create a new topic. That could be owners, managers, or all members of the group. So here, for this group, we can say managers of the group can assign topic. That gives a little more control to how you decide what topics goes where. Who is allowed to attach a file? This, some people will consider a security mechanism. If you allow the public to attach a file, then you increase your risk. If you allow only owners and managers to assign a file, well, you have better control, and that's depending on how you want to use the group. In this case, we're also allowing all members of the group to attach a file. Basically, if everyone else who can post cannot attach a file, only members of the group are allowed to do that. So if you have a project and you have a large group of people who are members of the team, but you want members of the project team to be able to share files and add files to the conversation, this is a very easy way to do it. You just allow all members of the group to attach files. It may not be the best way to handle file management, but at least it gives you the permission you need. So we'll see categories later, and then when we see categories, we'll see how to enter tags. Have custom profile photos, which means you want to decide who can have pictures assigned to their profile within the group, so that when you look at the group, you can actually see their pictures. That could be the owners, the managers, or members of the group. So let's use managers here, and then so managers and above can have that access. Mark favorites, reply on. So these are all indicators that can be added to the message that is being sent by the group. Me too topic means that somebody else can also add themselves to a topic. Posts. Who can post? If your group is such that it provides support services to the public, you can also allow public to hear, so that the public can ask questions and then you can respond to them. If your group is just within IEEE, then you can take this off. If it's just for a section or a society or an affinity group, and you only have members of those in the group, then you don't have to have all of organization members. And so these helps you decide who can post announcements, and you can actually say only the owner can post announcement, only manager can post announcement. That's really up to you. Now, this is key. Who can pretend to be the group? Post as the group. So typically, you would say the owner and the manager, not all members. But you might want to open that up. What this does is that it allows the person to post pretending to be the group, and they could even do that from their mailbox directly. I'll probably show you that configuration in another tutorial. Reply to owner. You can decide who can reply directly to owner or just post to the group. You probably don't want the public to do that, because then you lose control of your group entirely. Reply to auto-closed topics. So you could have topics closed automatically, but you can still allow certain members to reply to those topics. Canned messages are usually very helpful. What they do is that they allow you to give the impression that there's an automated response, or somebody's manning the table as it is all the time, and ensuring that when someone sends a post, they get a feel that somebody's responding to them. So you can use canned messages for those purposes. But who is able to use a canned message? You have to create a canned message and keep it there, and then when a message is sent, who is able to use that? And so this determines who can do that. So these are permissions that are under for posting. Moderation. This goes to who can moderate the group. Let's save the permissions we've changed. So moderation, who can manage the group, basically. So who can add members, who can approve members, who can approve messages, who can ban users and unban them, who can delete posts. And there's that little thing about categories all over again. We'll talk about categories in the future. Who can delete topics, who can edit other people's posts or edit their own posts, who can hide abusive messages, who can invite members, who can log. So you see, this is all about groups. So I'm sorry, members of the groups. So members of the groups are in their subgroups or roles, and each one of those roles can be given different permission here. So we can create a completely different role and grant a granular set of permission as we wish. Except we can basically, in this context, I mean, IEEE IT can. And so these are some of the permissions that are available under the moderation permission settings. And the final and the most important, maybe not the most important, but the final and the most expansive is the access permission. Basically, it talks about who can contact the owner of the group, who can view members, who can view member email addresses, and who can view topics. Of course, this is usually limited to owners of the organization. Although some of the settings here also permit all organization members to see some of this basic information. So, and now we see that group has roles and group members have permissions. And these are key when we're considering how to set up groups. Emails. So another setting that is of importance to groups, and all these settings are important because when we know what's out there, what's possible, it makes a few things easy for us. One, we understand how to use groups, Google Groups, in our communication, email options. So we have auto reply, we can post replies, we can manage maximum message size, we can manage email footer, subject prefixes, and we can also determine how to manage bounced mail notifications. All these are like features that we are used to in listserv. So on the email, you see, you can add a prefix, and this prefix just simply goes before all of this. For example, we can just use Baltimore section. So every time an email is sent, there's a Baltimore section piece tied to it. The cool thing about that is now, when we're doing a search of our email, we just search for Baltimore section to see all messages sent from this group. Email footer, you can decide to add a custom footer that is included. That could be an advertisement or some other information we may want to continuously share every time we do anything from the group message. Auto replies, you can determine who gets an automatically replied message and determine what that message will look like. Post replies. So users can determine where to send their messages. These are all configurations we can set. A maximum message size. Here we can determine how much is the maximum, including attachments that can be sent in the email. Some people will consider it a security feature in countries where internet access and data is very, very expensive. This is important so that you don't inundate people's message box with extremely large mails. So this is also a feature that can be used to help minimize nuisance value to members. And of course, you can determine who gets bounced messages and how that is managed. We've seen moderation already. We may want to consider it again. So under settings, so we go to moderation under settings, and here we see we can choose to moderate all messages, which means somebody would have to approve the messages before they are released to all members. We could choose to determine restriction on new members. The new members are restricted. Their posts are moderated. They're not allowed to post at all, or they could post anytime they want. And then that way we ensure that we watch new members and make sure they're not spammers, and we allow them to gain some reputation before we allow them to start just barraging members with unsolicited messages. Here we can decide to let members know if their moderated posts are rejected or not. And here we manage how we deal with spam messages. All of the settings can either be authorized. So the owner, whoever created the group, can allow other owners, can add other people as owners, or can allow other people, the managers, to have elevated rights to do many of these other settings. That's really up to the owner. So IEEE IT has to set these things and give volunteers permission to manage or not to manage some of these features. Categories. I talked about categories a couple of times, and let's take a look at categories. Categories are just another tool that allows us to better manage posts to groups. So we can use categories to force that conversations are organized in a specific way. That's a very nifty tool, particularly when we have specific topics we'll prefer to stick to. And so every conversation, every posting must fit within those categories, one category or the other. They're also helpful when we're doing search. They're not essential, but they could be very powerful tools when we think about group messaging. Of course, there are also tags. So here we can enable categories and create new categories. So I will just create one category and call it vTools, and add the category. Now that's a group of categories, so everything about vTools can be here. And I just had a subcategory under vTools, and I'll call it eNotice. And so everything under eNotices will be here. So now we have a category called vTools and a subcategory called eNotices. This is just, let's see. Okay, so now I can save. So next time I need to create a message for this group or a topic for this group, it has to be placed under a category. So let's see an example of that. Let's create a new topic. So we're creating a topic. We can call it release notes for e-notices or e-notice express. And we could start a discussion, or we could just make an announcement. So this e-notice release is an announcement, and under which category would that be? E-notices, of course. And then we can type whatever we want here and post it. Let's just say it has arrived, and then we can just post it, and now we have a message available under that category. Okay, so let's go back to the group manage. So that gives us an insight into categories. So categories make searching easy. So there could be announcements or discussions, but then all under those, we could set them as different categories. So let's consider a key use case of group. So for IEEE Google for You, one of the things I've heard people ask about is how do we have functional aliases such as chair at Oregon section. So when a chair leaves, that chair basically can hand off their email messages to another group, or say Oregon section chair, or Baltimore officers, or Lagos young professionals, or Madras women in engineering, and each of these functional aliases. So rather than, so every IEEE member has access to IEEE Google Apps, which means they have access to an IEEE email alias and mailbox. They can call that theirs as long as they're members. But when the members are volunteers, they hold functional roles. And when they change from one functional role to another, or they no longer perform any functional role, it is exciting to be able to transfer all the communications they've done under the guise of their functional role to another person who's taking over their role. That augurs well for continuity. So in order to achieve that objective, the Google Groups provide the most rational way, because emails sent within the groups are retained under the group, and group ownership, as we've seen, can change. Group membership can change. Group management can change. So all we need to do is to change who owns that group, and that new person now have access to all of the messages that were sent to and from that group. And that is the key here. So the email alias function provides us the ability to do that. And that takes us back to what I said at the very early stages of this, when we're trying to create a new group. When making the choice of the type of group we're creating, it is essential to understand the implications. So let's go back to the very beginning of groups and take a look at, go back to my home, create a group. Let's go back to this and check this. Is the group going to be a collaborative inbox, a web forum, an email list, or a Q&A forum? Let's think about the use cases. Oh, you're not seeing this. Let me cancel this process and bring it back here and show it to you. So let's create a new group, right? Go back to home, create group. So what kind of group are we creating? An email list, a web forum, a Q&A forum, or a collaborative inbox? An email list is like a listserv. It basically allows people to send messages to a list, post messages to a list, respond to messages from a list, in usually a relatively open fashion. A web forum is like an email list in some form, but it is really a social environment where people can discuss conversations. A lot of people have used that for help and support services. A Q&A forum is essentially just that, a question and answer forum. So where someone answers a question and a bunch of people can, ask a question and a bunch of people can answer those questions. And that's a basic Q&A. A collaborative inbox is a shared inbox. Again, let's think about that. A collaborative inbox is a shared inbox. It is a space where multiple people can work together on an inbox. So let's give an example. Let's say there is a team of 5 people, and the team of 5 people are working on a project. To outsiders, they want to present themselves as one single face. So they call themselves Team 5 at IEEE.org. Of course, each of them is a member, which means they have their own individual account that is tied to this group. When a message is sent to the collaborative inbox, any of the 5 can respond to that message, and the outsider will not know who has responded. When a message is sent by the team, it looks as if the team sent it, not an individual. Consider that use case and tie it and bring it down to an example. Let's say Baltimore section officers. Let's say that includes the chair, the vice chair, the treasurer, yada, yada, yada. And they want to present a single face to the section. So all those members will be members of a collaborative inbox. And when they send messages out, any of them send messages out, it will go out as if it's coming from Baltimore section officers. That could be helpful in some cases. So, and like I mentioned at the very beginning of this broadcast, there are several ways so each of these options gives group an identity of its own. So let's create this and say collab IEEE. I'll leave that as that. Let's collaborative. We'll keep that as a collaborative inbox and create that. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake. Let's go back to home and check my list of groups and see if I didn't create collab. I did. I'm just going to have to delete something. Good. I was just going to delete that group because I was trying to create a collaborative and I ended up creating it. So let's do this again. Collaborative. Let's change this to a collaborative inbox. See, that's really what we wanted. And create the group. So now we have a collaborative inbox group. And we can now use it for that purpose. So let's go back to groups and consider collaborative inbox. And let's create a new topic under collaborative inbox, tests topic. And say we start a discussion. So we have a different mailboxes, group types for different purposes. So we'll come back to this later. So some of the use cases are owners can send messages direct from email, owners can post from the web, owners can permitted members can post from the web, permitted members can impersonate group, messages can be organized in threads. Those are some of the feature sets and by extension, some of the use cases for groups. So most of the examples I'm showing you using the group. So we can go back. Let's go back to the first group we created here. This is this group. And let's create a new topic. Let's impersonate the group. And let's send a message to IEEE email address. Let's start a discussion. Let's put it under a category of e-notices. That's the only category we have. And once you create categories, now you're compelled to use them. Let's say welcome to e-notices. Now we can post this. It's posted. This is sent by the group. See, this group. The name of the group is what shows up as the sender. So the functional alias will be what will show up as the sender, not the user. So let me go and actually demonstrate a little bit of what I just did by going to my IEEE email address, opening that up. I haven't received the message yet. But when I do receive the message in my IEEE email box, it will be from this group rather than from the user directly. So this is basically what we call allowing a member to impersonate the group. Of course, messages are organized in threads. So if somebody replies to this message, thanks for your response. Again, I can continue to impersonate. So now the message is in thread. Here we can assign this message to another member of the group. So who do we want to assign this message to? Christine, I think, was a member of the group. Okay, so we have to find a member who is permitted to get assigned. So that goes back to the sections of the message, of the group, and then we'll determine who can be assigned messages. Okay. Another use case, messages belong to OU, not to users, which means the organizational unit actually owns the message. So you can always change owners and members and all the other stuff about the group, but the messages will remain and they belong to the OU. Messages can be assigned to specific members for response. So we saw the assigned, so we just need to configure who can receive it. And message delivery options are similar to what we have in listserv. We showed some of that at the very outset of this. And when we go back to groups and members, we can determine member by member or as a group who have access to what. And what kind of delivery they get. So all delivery for this, let's change it to digest only. Now we see that this person can only receive digests. And so we can use that to control the frequency at which messages are sent to users. Okay, so another use case, we want to use it for customer support. And that takes us back to the options. So if we're going to use a group for support, it is better to use it, to create a group type that supports that from scratch. So let's go back to create groups and we call it support IEEE vTools support. And in this case, instead of creating an email list, which doesn't help a lot, we could create either a QA forum or a web forum. I'll create a web forum because it's a little more open-ended in its form and helps the support type better. So we create a web forum. You can also come back and change all the settings, add group members and all the other stuff that we normally do. We could do that. So we could manage this group by adding members directly, as we've said before. We could go to some of the settings, the email options, and determine the prefixes and how they're set up. Display names and email addresses of people we may or may not. Do moderation. So if it's a support, you probably want to manage all so that we know who exactly is sending messages and ensuring that we have control over what's going on. Let's go back to this. I didn't save. So now save. Let's go to this. So if you're doing a support forum, you want people to actually say, okay, this is what the topic looks like. And that's better. It makes it easy for search. And we can determine how many tags we want. This is voting. Just say these are some of the tags we find interesting, so we can add more tags and save. Categories, the same thing. We've seen categories earlier. We can come back and add as many categories. Permission, select user who can view topic. Everybody should be able to view topic. Who can post? Let the public post because we are providing support. Who can join the group? Those are really those that we want. Let's say anyone in the organization can join the group because various people want to volunteer and provide support. This is interesting. We might just want to keep this within IEEE and leave this off. Post. So I need to save this first. And then posting permission, who is allowed to post. This is very important. The public should be able to post. And then we can come around here based on our workflow and determine what else we want to do. Still keep forgetting that. Moderation. So how do we determine what gets posted? So we can manage this based on whatever policy we have for our support group. Same thing goes for who can see what, the same row goes. Information, what do we present to the public? So we can make this fancy. These embedding allow you to just post this content into a web page somewhere else, and suddenly it makes it easy for people to know. So we can just post this on the vTools web, and then people will be able to go to the vTools web and access the group from there, and they can interact with the group all just from the web interface. Directory, we want to see if it's listed in the Google directory or in the group directory in general, so that it's easy to find. Often posts that nobody really is paying attention to, and this might help us know what's really going on. So people will be able to rate answers, and then we can decide which is the best and let them vote for the best answers. And that's it. So now we have another type of group. So we've seen three types of groups already: email groups, web forums, as well as collaborative inbox. So all of these different groups have values in different use scenarios for IEEE OUs. So as we see, in the case, once we create a group for an alias, we can assign managers to it using data from SAMI. All of Google Apps is programmable, so we can automatically provision content. Who are the users? Who are the members? Who are the owners? We can automatically provision all of those into group, and IEEE IT is doing that currently for many of the groups. Of course, we can configure posting permissions to determine based on the use case we have in mind. And scanned messages can be a helpful way of interacting with a large group without giving them the impression that there's no one really manning the group. And then we can always assign posts to member. So if someone sends a message, we can decide who gets the message and responds to them at any one time. So that does it for groups. And now hopefully this will give some idea of what you are able to do with IEEE Google Group for OU. And if you have any question, feel free to join us again at the vTools broadcast. Thank you very much and have yourself a wonderful day.